Okay, so why did the apostles cross the lake? Thank you, Bob. To get to the other side, right? I was afraid if I told, okay, good. Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, literally, that's what it says. It's the butt of many jokes, but it's what it says. They were doing it. What's interesting is the words, one of them's in there, and the other gets glossed over, and I don't know why. In Greek, it's immediately he forced them into the boat. He, Jesus, immediately after having fed them, he forced them into the boat. That's the literal translation we have. He made them get into the boat. So it's still there. The immediately is gone, and I don't know why. We didn't want to say it. It shows up later. It's the exact same word in Greek. It's always kind of funny how things get translated. Why does he immediately force them into a boat to go to the other side? I always thought this was a weird story even as a kid. Like, you guys got to do this. I'll see you later. Like, was it all just a setup for him to come walking out on the water? I don't know. That's not the point. What's interesting, though, is about this story, and so this is chapter 14. You may recall in Matthew's gospel, there's another boat catastrophe story with Jesus. He's sleeping up in the front. That's chapter 8. So Matthew has these two. And Matthew steals these from Mark. Mark has these exact stories, too. But what Matthew has that Mark doesn't is this idea of, Lord, save me, or in Matthew 8, right? I mean, he's like, Lord, are you not worried that we are perishing? And that we, by the way, didn't include Jesus. They somehow knew he was not in any trouble in that story. They just figured they were in trouble. So they've added this detail of, Lord, save me, Lord, save us, Matthew and his community, and then add out of the mouth of Jesus, ye of little faith. Ye of little faith. And there is something that shows up in all these stories about going to the other side. Who is the other side? Literally in these stories, it's always Gentile territory. It's always people not like them. It's always people who aren't Jewish. And it usually has some hostility attached to it. So in addition to the tumult and trauma of the sea, you have the tumult and trauma of where we're going. Like, isn't bad enough where we're going isn't friendly. The trip there was traumatic. Okay, so we have that as the piece. We have to think about for ourselves and what it means for us. Let me pause for a second and say that in that experience, anytime we're working with the other side, I think there's always those questions of, how are we going to do it? Whatever it is. Maybe it's the unchurched. Maybe it's people who disagree with us in terms of how we see life, how we see our politics, how we see our church, even for that matter. The unchurched could represent a lot of people. The margins, people that are not like us. The poor, the needy, the downtrodden, all of that. That represents the other side to us. And then the question becomes, how will we reach them? And the more recalcitrant others are, the more resistant they are to any kind of engagement. How are we going to reach them? And that's where I think this word is really critical, where there's Peter sinking, literally sinking, and saying, save me. And he knows the guy in front of him can do it. But there had to have been a part of him that, right, and Peter has this weird thing like, Lord, if it's really you, call me out to you, right? Like there's this sort of spiritual flex that he's doing, like, I'm going to do this in front of all the others. I'm going to get to walk on the water just like Jesus. And you know Jesus in his head like, sure, let's do this. Come on out here. And imagine for him on some level that it was just going to be about Jesus' power. And on some level, he was fine until he thought about it, right? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Starts to sing. And he begs Jesus to save him, which he does. And so the question for us as we work to the other side, as we try to connect people, in that moment, how do you and I feel? I don't know about you, but the word that I use a lot is lost. I feel lost. How do I reach people? What's the manner in which I can engage with people, whatever the other side is, whatever the issue is, whatever the problem is? How am I going to engage them? And there's a part of me that just feels lost sometimes. And people in this church of a certain age would remember Christina Crawford. Young people, I doubt, right? Joan Crawford's daughter, Mommy Dearest. Oh, yeah. No more wire hangers ever. Yeah, okay. Young people, look it up. It's a terrible story. But, right, she's the daughter of a famous actress. And Mom was just tough on her. And in her autobiography, she says a phrase that I stole from Father Ron Rolheiser, so I'm stealing it third hand. But Christina said, lost is a place too. Lost is a place too. And there's nothing wrong with being there. I think that's part of the issue for Peter, and it's part of the issue for us, that in that moment when we go, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to engage this. I don't know how I'm going to get the work done to be this reflection of God's love in this moment. It's okay to be lost. It's okay to be in the middle of the sea, unsure of how we're getting to the other side or what we're going to do when we get there. That's Dorothy Day's story. Right here, she is this avowed atheist. She's had this child with her atheist boyfriend, and then when the girl's born, she has this epiphany moment and said, I needed to thank someone, and she becomes Catholic. But what was interesting in that experience, even though she had this profound moment, all of a sudden then the reality hit her, I don't have any friends, because all of her friends were atheists. They had no use for her now. And in that moment, she felt completely lost. And enters her life, Peter Morin, if you know her story, right, becomes this great spiritual friend to her and restores that zeal and the vision she had for the poor and for the church. Martin Luther King has many examples in his writings about that in his life. He had one in particular where he'd just gone to bed and the phone rings middle of the night and it's someone calling, saying awful things to him and threatening his life and telling him to get out of Montgomery. And he tells the story. He just got up middle of the night, made some coffee, and he's just staring at it. He's not drinking it. He's just lost. And yet he has this profound moment of realizing, if I don't lead these people, they will become as lost as I feel. And I need to act. And he found this new strength and sense of vision in that moment. And then the last example I'll give you is, as I often say, St. Francis de Sales, who was raised in the height of the Protestant Reformation. Calvinism was the theology of the day in Geneva, where he ends up being bishop. And as a young man, he has that crisis of faith. What if I'm predestined to hell? And standing in front of the statue of Our Lady of Good Deliverance, he has this moment in that space of just crippling anxiety around it. He was lost. He just becomes set free with this thought. I can't control that. I'm just going to love God here today. That's all I can control. And ironically, when he made that decision, he was set free. And this really attractive and optimistic spirituality is born out of letting go of what he couldn't control, where he was lost. And I don't know about you, but lost is a place too. It is a place to be, and it invites us in a very special way to be people of prayer. Sometimes it's only in that moment when we have nothing else to plot or plan or think about that we can really let God speak to our heart to heart. Not my mouth in God's ear, but heart to heart. Lord, I'm lost. Lord, save me. Lord, save us. If you've ever looked at if you were part of the construction of our worship space, do you know what this space is called that you're sitting in? You're like, come on, Father, school hasn't started yet. What's with the questions? It's called the nave, right? You're sitting in the nave. And that comes from the Latin word navis, which means boat, which means ship. And the ship was not designed to be tied and anchored at the dock. The ship is designed to go out, to get to the other side, to reach people, not with threats of condemnation, not with more explanation or shouting them down with our words, but to meet people right where they are with some gentleness, with some humility, with some love. Because as we realize in our own experience of being lost, to the extent we get found, it's only through the one. It's the same one Peter's screaming at, Lord, save me. And he does. It is our little faith that makes going to the other side so difficult. But if we can, in those moments, really be people of prayer, really trust him, and realize he is our only hope, then we can sing just like we did to open this liturgy. Lay down your burdens, brothers and sisters. Lay down your shame. And we're coming to the one who will help us understand our infinite value, how infinitely lovable we are. And when we begin to grasp that love, we can share that with others, but then and only then. And so somehow that lostness becomes necessary. And now we've come full circle. I think I fully understand why he immediately forced them into the boat. There's no cheat. There's no back of the book. There's no way around the crisis moment of having to kind of let go of controlling it and be lost for a little bit. Because as Christina said, lost is a place too. And so no matter what's on your heart today, maybe you're filled with the anxiety of feeling lost, difficulty in relationships, family, friends, all of that. Or maybe it's a really good day. But I think all of us can recall a moment where we've been out on the water, we're not sure where we're going. And that's when we know that Jesus is standing there. And when we say, save us, indeed he does. May God be praised.